So continuing on with DIs, a passive DI is a really simple thing. You can see up the top we've got a 1/4 inch input jack, and we're going to drive it into a 1/4 inch output jack, and they're directly wired and this into each other. It's just a wire going into there, and so the guitar can plug into the amplifier. But we see that there is a 12-to-1 transformer there, and that's going to step down voltage and impedance to go into pin 2 and pin 3, and it's going to create a differential signal because that's what transformers do. And you've got a differential output there. And the ground, you can connect it or not connect it. That's your choice. You still get an audio signal through it no matter what. So that can, of course, lift, your ground loop. Now, passive DIs are really simple in circuit, and some transformers are, big classic American metal, I don't have to be American, but just big metal transformers are known for their soft saturation, their warm tone. Some people really prefer these old classic DIs. But the problem with passive DIs is that you are really dependent on the mic preamp's impedance stepped up and reflected through that 12-to-1 transformer to provide the load impedance for the bass or the guitar that's plugged into it. And if you have something that's high impedance, I mean really high impedance, like a piezo pickup, where it's I don't know, itself is 100,000 ohms or a mega ohms, the DI you're essentially going to go high impedance to low impedance, and you're going to load down that active circuit, or you're going to load down that pickup, and it's not going to perform well. You're going to be going high to low. You're not going to be going low to high. You're not bridging it. And this can really affect the level of frequency response and distortion. So the solution is an active pickup, active DI. And those of you who are taking recording classes, maybe you've encountered that. Josh may grab like the really big brick DI or that kind of thing. And these active DIs, these powered DIs, they have amplifiers inside of them. They often have an op amp. They have transistors. They have these active circuitry, and active circuitry op amps have very, very high input impedances. This Countryman here has a FET in it, a field effect transistor, and so it's a transistor based circuit, and it's high impedance coming into it, and so you get to really bridge, and you get to plug anything you want into it and not worry about it loading down the source. Now, in the case of piezo pickups, like for example these Barkus Berries here that are on the bottom of Nora Jones' piano, or this little guitar pickup here, if you have a really, really high source impedance, the solution might be this radial PZDI, which is made specifically for these really high impedance sources. And there's a switch on the front that you can pick the loading of the DI's input. And it can go all the way up to 10 mega ohms, which means if you've got a 1 mega ohm piezo pickup, you can go into 10 and get 1-to-10 ratio. And so this will help these kind of traditionally really crappy sounding pickups sound a lot better. At least I've been told that. I'd like to buy this DI just to hear it. But that's what I've been told, that it kind of opens them up, which is pretty cool. All right, moving on to kind of the last DI thing. What about reamping? Reamping is kind of like going in backwards into a DI. Oftentimes you'll be in a recording situation, let's say the Nescom studio, it's got 2 ISO booths. You put a guitar amp in one ISO, and you put a drums out in the live room, and you put the vocal in the other ISO, and the bass, where's the bass amp going to go? Like, you got no place to put the bass amp. So you record the bass with a DI, and later on you're going to reamp it. Well, how do you do that? Well, you take the output of Pro Tools, and you got to plug it into a bass amp. And if you go through a normal DI, it's not really designed for this to work, and it's never gonna sound exactly right when you take the XLR +4 output of the Pro Tools balanced Pro Tools interface and try to plug that into an unbalanced guitar amp and expect it to sound anything like it originally did. So you get a reamper, and we've got a reamp box at Nescom, and it helps you get that better quality sound if you're going back to an amp, or if you're going through effects pedals and that sort of stuff. And that's some really cool stuff. And so here's a kind of a quick layout of how this works. Here's your Pro Tools interface. It's got an output of 50 ohms. The reamp box will ensure that Pro Tools is bridged nicely. So the reamp box has got some resistors in there to guarantee that the Pro Tools, before it feeds, as it's a combination of the resistors and the transformer in there, Pro Tools is going to see 16,000 ohms. So 50 to 16,000 ohms is definitely bridge. But then it also, on the output, it lowers it down. It actually raises the output level. So what was 50 ohms is now 15,000 ohms. And 15,000 ohms is very similar to a bass or a guitar. So then you can now plug it into your bass amp. And the bass amp, of course, is somewhere between 100,000 ohms and 1 mega ohm. So you're creating a very bridged relationship as you leapfrog along the way. And that is what a reamp box does. Now, a question would be, why can't I just use a DI? And because the ratios aren't correct, and you won't end up getting the as delivered sound. So reamp boxes are cool and definitely worth digging into. And if anybody's into it, kind of cool building, right? That'd be a cool project. And that particular project right there, the L2A is about $50, and I recommend that kit. It's pretty cool.